Alfred had a problem. His wife was gone. Not dead, not kidnapped, gone. As in, she packed her things, looked him dead in the eye, and walked out the door. And where did she go? To a Viking. A massive, blonde, axe-wielding Scandinavian who had absolutely zero right to be that attractive. Now, Alfred was a lord, Anglo-Saxon nobility. He had land, he had titles, he had a sword he could barely lift. He had everything a woman could want in 9th century England. Everything except, apparently, the one thing that mattered. But Alfred didn't know that yet. He sat alone in his manor, surrounded by the smell of, well, let's just say it was him. The rushes on his floor hadn't been changed in months. There was old food somewhere. He couldn't find it. Didn't matter. And on the table in front of him sat the only thing his wife left behind. A comb. A beautifully carved Viking comb. Alfred stared at it like it was a cursed artifact. Because in his mind, it was. This had to be magic. Dark Viking sorcery. How else could she choose them over him? These were raiders, barbarians, pagans who drank from skulls and sacrificed goats. They weren't supposed to be attractive. But here's the thing about Alfred. He wasn't going to just accept defeat. Oh no. He was going to figure out their secret. He was going to infiltrate their camp, spy on them, learn their dark rituals, and then, maybe, he'd win her back. So Alfred grabbed his sword, his shield, his dignity, and set off on his mission. He made it about 10 steps before he had to stop and catch his breath. Warfare is hard when you haven't bathed in a year. The Viking settlement wasn't far. Danelaw territory. These Norsemen had carved out their own little piece of England, and Alfred was about to go full covert ops. He crept into their camp at dawn, expecting chaos, war cries, blood sacrifices, maybe a human skull being passed around for breakfast. Instead, he saw a man combing his hair. Not just any man, a giant. Muscles on muscles, beard down to his chest. The kind of guy who could split you in half with one hand. And this absolute unit of Viking warfare was sitting on a log in the soft morning light, gently running a comb through his beard like he was in a shampoo commercial. Alfred blinked. This had to be a warm-up for something violent, right? Maybe he combs his beard before battle? For intimidation? 20 minutes later, the Viking was still combing. Alfred's brain was short-circuiting. Where was the magic? Where was the ritual? This man had just spent more time on his hair than Alfred had spent on anything in the past month. And then, it got weirder. The Viking reached into a small leather pouch on his belt. Alfred leaned forward. This is it. The secret weapon. Poison? Runes? Some ancient Norse hex? The Viking pulled out a tiny spoon. A spoon for his ears. Alfred watched, paralyzed by confusion, as this warrior of legend cleaned his earwax with the precision of a surgeon. Then came the tweezers. For his eyebrows, this man had a whole grooming kit, a tactical toiletry bag, and he was using it voluntarily. Alfred had never felt so personally attacked by hygiene in his entire life. But wait, it gets worse. Alfred followed a group of Vikings to a nearby stream, still convinced he was missing something. They couldn't all be this vain. This had to be a special occasion, a festival, a pre-battle ritual. Nope. It was a Tuesday. The Vikings stripped down and started washing their hair with soap. Actual soap made from animal fat and wood ash. Lye-based, industrial strength, and apparently the cornerstone of Viking culture. But here's where Alfred's mind truly broke. After washing their hair, some of the Vikings started applying a different mixture, a bleaching agent, They were dyeing their beards blonde. Alfred, hiding behind a tree, whispered to himself, "They're bleaching their hair like women?" And then he looked past the Vikings to the Anglo-Saxon women watching from the village. They weren't horrified, they were interested. One of them giggled, another one waved. Alfred's whole worldview crumbled. His wife didn't leave him for a savage. She left him for a man who used cosmetics. He had a flashback. His wife 3 months ago, holding out a comb. "Alfred, please, just try." And Alfred, puffing out his chest. "I am a lord. I don't need vanity." She had sighed. She had tried. And now, here he was, watching a Viking named Bjorn condition his beard with imported soap, while Alfred's own hair had things living in it. Probably. Here's the kicker. This wasn't new. Arab travelers had been writing about this for decades. A guy named Ahmad ibn Fadlan met Vikings in the 922nd and was horrified by how much they cared about their appearance. He wrote about their grooming habits like he was documenting an alien species. And back in England, the clergy were furious. There are actual complaints from monks saying that Viking men were stealing English women because they were too clean, too attractive, too well-groomed. One monk, John of Wallingford, literally wrote that Vikings combed their hair daily and bathed weekly, and that's why English women found them irresistible. Let that sink in. A monk was mad that Vikings showered. Alfred was living in a society where bathing once a year made you fancy. And then came Saturday, Lorgadaga, washing day, the day that shattered what was left of Alfred's soul. He watched as the entire Viking camp, and I mean everyone, men, women, children, warriors, blacksmiths, the guy who fed the chickens, all of them headed to the communal bathhouse. It was like a weekly pilgrimage, a spa day for an entire civilization. Alfred stood there, covered in his own filth, watching people voluntarily get clean. They had built infrastructure for this. Saunas, heated stones, buckets of water. This wasn't a special occasion. This was routine. In Old Norse, Saturday literally means bathing day. They named a day of the week after hygiene. Meanwhile, Alfred's people named days after gods they barely remembered and then didn't bathe on any of them. And then, the final betrayal. Bjorn emerged from the bathhouse, freshly washed, beard bleached to perfection, smelling like, well, not like a medieval peasant, that's for sure. And walking toward him, smiling, was Alfred's wife. She handed Bjorn a fresh comb. He smiled. She smiled. They kissed. Alfred felt his knees buckle. It wasn't magic. It wasn't violence. It wasn't Viking runes or pagan rituals or berserker rage. It was soap. She left him for a man who used soap. Alfred stumbled back to his manor that night. Broken, he sat at his table, alone again, and stared at the comb his wife had left behind. For the first time in his life, he picked it up. He tried to comb his hair. It hurt. Things came out. He didn't look at them. Too little, too late. But here's the thing. Alfred wasn't the only one who learned this lesson. Within a few generations, Anglo-Saxons started adopting Viking grooming standards. The influence spread, the cleanliness stuck. By the 11th century, England had learned that maybe, just maybe, bathing wasn't the devil's work. The Vikings didn't just conquer England with swords and longships. They conquered it with combs, soap, and the radical idea that you should probably wash yourself more than once a decade. And 1,000 years later, we're still living in their world. To conquer the day. You know that little Bluetooth symbol on your phone? The one you use to connect your headphones, your car, your life. That's the initials of King Harald, Bluetooth, Bluetooth. a Viking king who united Denmark and Norway in the 10th century. His name in runes, H and B, merged together, because some engineer in the 1990 seconds thought, you know who was really good at connecting things? Vikings. So every time you pair your AirPods, you're paying homage to a culture that understood something medieval Europe refused to accept. Cleanliness is next to godliness, or in their case, cleanliness is next to getting the girl. Alfred never got his wife back. But somewhere, in the annals of history, his story survived as a warning, a cautionary tale about what happens when you refuse to bathe. The Vikings didn't need magic. They had something far more powerful. They had hygiene, and that, my friends, is how a comb changed the course of Western civilization. If Alfred were here today, I think he'd have one thing to say. For the love of Odin, just take a shower.